No, so for the last few weeks, we have been doing, it wasn't really intentional, but we've been looking at the subject of money and finance. And today we're going to finish off this little kind of series. Next week, we're going to be starting a brand new series called God Loves the Church. And I'm really excited about that because God does love the church. And I'm sorry, I won't start preaching next week's preach right now. And I'm going to try my hardest not to preach. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, then we know for next time, don't we? We're all right about that. But just to finish off looking at money, I don't know about you, but the world is talking about money at the moment like it's never talked about money before. When I kind of chat with work colleagues or friends, like there's such an openness about finance at the moment. It's almost as if we've forgotten that we're British. The way we're talking about money and our worries about money. And like, I don't know about your background. Some of you might be used to church. Some of you might not be used to church. But sometimes when the church talks about money, it's like, oh, hold on a second. Like, listen, I can talk about money, but the church should not talk about money. And that is wrong. Because the church, of course, it should talk about money because it's a pretty big issue, isn't it, in our lives. It's like huge. It controls so much of us. And if we say we are Christ followers, people who love God and who want to follow his direction, of course, we should understand what God is talking about when it comes to money. And so that's why we've been doing this over the last few weeks. That's why we're going to finish that off today as well. And in a little while, I'm going to get up to amazing friends of mine and people who I really respect and listen to when it comes to money as well. They happen to be two of our trustees of the church as well. And we're going to have like a little bit of a panel of a Q&A. And so you can text in any question that you want. I think it's going to come up on the screen. So you can text, if you text MKRYT to 60777, and then your question, you can ask our panel of Tim and Caz any question that you want. I think when it comes to finance, but hey, why don't we test them anyway? With that, text may be charged at your standard rate, or you can scan that little QR code and it will open up the text message for you. You don't need to be nervous. But before we get them up, I just want to share really quickly, because I'm not allowed to preach today. Sian's told me, my wife. But some things that I think is fundamental when it comes to talking finance and talking finance in a kingdom mindset when it comes to God. And I'm just going to say these, and then we're going to get up Caz and Tim as well. Number one, have an eternal mindset. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes it's so hard to see further ahead than kind of the end of our arms. Like my kids, we've got 3 children who we love most of the time. And, 50% of the time. And like, it's been half term, and if you can have kids or you can remember having kids, like being stuck at home with your kids is a nightmare, especially when they're young and they've got lots of energy. And so we're like, right, we're going to go out. We're going to go out to Clumber Park, which is our local park. Whenever we say the words Clumber Park in our house, all we get is, oh, no. Because all they want to do is sit at home and watch YouTube all day. Here's the reality of what I've learned. When we get to Clumber Park, when we get to the playgrounds, when they're having their hot chocolate, which has cost us about £7 now, from the cafe, they're loving it. There's smiles on their faces, they're running around, but they can't see that far. And so sometimes we can't see kind of a meter in front of us or a day in front of us, but actually we're called to have an eternal mindset because as Christ followers, as people that have given our lives to God, we get to live forever with God. And I think that's an important principle to remember when it comes to our finance as well. Hey, God has not just called us to live, our 10, but actually we're going to live forever. And I think that's an important mindset to have when it comes to thinking finance. I think the second thing we can remember is that God never lets us down. God has never let us down. When we seek him, he doesn't let us down. Never, never, never. And we've sung about that this morning. We've sung about his faithfulness, but it's hard to live that out when it comes to our finance, isn't it? It's difficult to kind of put that into action. And the third thing that I just wanted to say, and I think this is so important to remember, God is after our hearts, not our wallets. He's after your heart, not your wallet. And I think this is sometimes why the church is shied away talking about money, because they think, oh, we're just after your money. But God is after our hearts. It just so happens that for most people, our wallets control our hearts. And that's why I think the Bible talks about money an awful lot. And it does talk about money loads. Because God is after our hearts. He wants to say, hey, you're singing about me. You're saying you love me. You're saying you trust me. You're saying you'll go wherever I ask. But will you? And that's why it talks about finance. There's my 3 really quick principles. Are you happy? That's quick. So why don't we welcome up Caz and Tim. Give them a round of applause. I've got my phone out. I'm not on Facebook. But it's hopefully, they're quite high stools. I've got some microphones for you. They don't squeak and they don't spin. We used to have spinny stools, didn't we, Caz? Oh. It was great when we had spinny stools because they'd just start to spin slowly in the preach, and then by the end of it, you'd have the back of the head. It'd be great. So, hey, Caz, well, we'll start off with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of a little bit of a kind of a financial background, not like your bank details or anything like that. I'll start. Like Caz actually sorted out our first ever mortgage for us. Can you remember? I don't think you turned on. Are you turned on? It's a bit dark up here. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm good with... Oh, gosh.
She's good with money, but not a microphone.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Is that on? Yeah. Yeah, I don't like tech. Me and my husband, we were leaders here for quite a few years. And one of our proudest things, lots of proud things over the years, but probably when we look back at what we did, one of our proudest moments is employing Marcus as youth pastor and later on Sean. And they are incredible, incredible leaders. We knew that at the time. And so that's my little proud moment for being a church leader. But as well as that, Mark and I, we own a business. And it's really boring, the stuff that we sell. It's garage equipment and tools. And we'll supply like the little garage on the corner. But we'll also supply people like Halfords and Quick Fit. And so we're bringing in a lot of products from the Far East and from Europe. We've got about 50 people that we employ. And I'm really blessed to have an amazing team of employees, but also advisors. You need advisors when you're in business. So I've got accountants. We've got solicitors, we've got financial advisors, we've got specialist tax people, because you can never know it all. And sometimes I go into work and something happens and I think, I have not got a clue what I am doing. Anybody else ever feel like that at work? But yeah, you get advice and help from wherever you can.
And you, Tim.
Thanks, Marcus. Incidentally, if I skip any important parts, just prompt me and I'll answer them. Don't think you've missed your opportunities to text in questions as well. If there's anything that Caz or I say that prompt a further question, please text them in. It's not often I get to tell this story, actually, and coincidentally, it's twice in 2 days, because yesterday my son Sam, I can talk about him because he's not in the service now. He's 13 years old, and he's just thinking about his future. And so he wanted to know how I ended up doing my job, so I got to tell him this story yesterday, so a bit of practice. I think for me, my sort of background in finance started towards the end of school. I picked economics as an A-level and really, really enjoyed it. And didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But because I enjoyed it, I picked economics degree at university. So I went to Leeds Uni, did a degree in economics and absolutely loved it. And then I sort of went travelling for a year with a missionary organisation in Africa, came back, did 2 years at Bible College, which has got nothing at all to do with finance. Although, as we've heard, the Bible talks a lot about finance. And then after that, got married and started to train as an accountant. So took 3 years to get a chartered accountancy qualification, working in a practice, which is a big firm full of accountants. And then did 5 years there, and then moved to my current employer, which is DFS Furniture. I don't know if anybody knows of them. We sell sofas.
They're always on offer.
So you might hear DFS come up a few times later on as well. Started as a financial accountant, moved into the group financial controller position, and more recently, the last couple of years, I'm now head of tax and treasury for the DFS group. So my responsibility is all taxes for DFS group. That's corporation tax, VAT, PAYE, any other tax you can think of, kind of comes under my responsibility. I've got a team of 5 people who work in my team, but we sit in a much larger finance team of 60 to 70 people. So tax is half of my job, and treasury is the other side. So look after all the banking relationships that DFS have. Obviously, there's a syndicate of, it's not obvious, sorry to you guys. There's a syndicate of 7 banks in our debt facility, so it's relationship with those banks and any treasury activities, so FX, trading, interest rates, things like that, come under my remit.
Fair bit, but it can't get you a discount on a sofa.
I'll try, if you...
Awesome. Hey, so first question, really practical here. So what is the interest rate and how does it affect me?
So, I was going to look this up on the Bank of England website last night, actually, but I forgot. I think it's 2.25% now. Yeah. Shall I go first, Caz? Okay. So, just repeat the question again.
So, what is the interest rate? I don't think they're saying like the amount, but what does it mean, and
Yes.
and how does that? I think we hear it in the news, don't we, all the time? The interest rates going up, blah blah blah. But what is it, and why is it going up, and why does that affect? How does that affect me?
Yeah. So, effectively, interest rate is the perceived risk of borrowing money at any point in time. So you get different interest rates for different kinds of borrowing. And this Bank of England base rate that we talked about, which is 2.25%, is higher than it's been for many, many years. We've had, over the last 10 years, even longer, we've had record low interest rates, which was designed to stimulate growth, encourage borrowing for businesses to grow. It's creeping up now because of inflation, and inflation is the rate at which general prices are increasing, and the way the Bank of England can control that is by putting up interest rates, which makes it more expensive to borrow, and therefore just calms growth and then brings inflation down. So it affects all our lives because most people have to borrow at some point in their life, even if it's just to buy a house, and people get a mortgage to buy a house, and therefore the repayments on that borrowing go up as interest rates go up. So it impacts, most of us at some point in time. If other people have got other debts as well, it will impact them even more. I think, do you want to say anything?
Well, interest rates, when they're higher, are good for you if you've got savings. So maybe sometimes you might have some money in a bank, in an ISA, and when the interest rate goes up, that's really, really nice. But for most of the population, we've got mortgages, we've got bank loans, we've got credit cards. So when the interest rate goes up, it really does affect you. One thing I would say, that if you have mortgage, generally it's recommended that you keep 3 to 6 months savings in your bank account. So just say you lost your job, you've got enough to cover you for 3 to 6 months. And I know that's a stretch, but that is the recommendation, that if you're starting out in life, try and always retain that amount. But then anything after that, if you've got a mortgage, generally at the moment, you're better paying off your mortgage. So that's, quite a good, a tip as well. So keep an eye on your interest rates. Whenever you go for a mortgage, don't think, oh, this is what I've just got to pay now. When Mark and I bought our first house, interest rates were nearly 15%. 15% on a mortgage. So always leave yourself some margin if it is possible. Never overstretch and think, you know what, I can do this. There's always got to be margin. Is that okay?
That's really good. I was talking to someone the other day, a colleague from, and we were just talking, and they said, oh yeah, you should never, because people spend over their means, don't they? And they said, oh, try to live in my means. And I think what you're saying, Caz, is actually we should try and live under our means.
Yeah,
have you got any tips on kind of maybe anyone wants to start saving but they've never managed it so far?
Yeah, it always seems like an uphill struggle once you start doing it. But the big thing about life is sometimes there has to be pain now in order for there to be, the gain at the end. A bit of pain to get the gain. We know that through exercise, don't we? And so maybe, even if you could set yourself, okay, I'm not going to have those 2 takeaway coffees, or I'm not going to have that takeaway. Whatever your situation is, if it's £10 a week, in a year, that's £520. Over 5 years, you do the maths, £2,500, £3,000. And so if you start now small, just putting away for a rainy day, because believe you me, I don't know why people are in shock, really, at the moment, because there's always rainy days. Those of us who are a little bit more mature will tell you, we've seen this. It's never always easy, so save.
And I think the risk of the last sort of 10, 15 years, while interest rates have been so low, I think people have been fallen into that understanding that they're always going to be low. So debt's okay, but actually there is increased risk of the higher payments when interest rates go up.
I'm going to ask another question that's come in based on what you've just said. When will prices go back to normal?
Oh, gosh, if we knew that, I think we'd be triple millionaires, billionaires, wouldn't we? No time soon. That would be it. I am a glass half empty person, but I'm a realist. They are not going to go down. There's too many crises in the world. There's China on lockdown. There's a war in Ukraine. There's the energy crisis. There's all the money that the government paid out for us to, be safe during COVID. It is not going to go away soon. It is literally, we have to ride this. We pray that, Russia or whoever comes in, whatever they do, we pray. But listen, you live life. This is how I've lived life. We live life, yes, in a positive way. God can look after us and, and things might not, but we actually are careful and we put a little bit aside for those rainy days because, there's that story, isn't it? The wise man, he built his house on foundations, and then when the storm came, it stood the test of time, and we need to build our life on firm foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very, very rare that prices actually come down. I think what I'm hopeful for is that the rate of increase, because at the moment, it almost seems like every other month you go into the shop, they've jumped up again. I think they will start stabilising. I don't think they'll go down, but the rate of increase, i.e. inflation, that's definition of inflation, will fall, and then they'll stabilise rather than keep up. But not at the moment. I think because you've got the war in Ukraine and the squeeze that's put on energy, that's coming through, and actually the exchange rate between the sterling and the US dollar has gone against us, and that's actually fed into a lot of inflation. Everything that we import and we pay for in US dollars has just become so much more expensive because of the exchange rate. And that's not just a problem, that's not because of a problem in the UK, it's actually the strength of the US dollar as well. Their economy is really going well. So that's fed into inflation. But I think going into next year, inflation will come down and they'll start stabilising, the prices will start levelling off again, hopefully.
Watch this space. Hey, right. So I'm going to kind of come back to this budgeting. It's a good question, and they're tough questions, I think, because I think when it comes to finance, it's always really specific to our own situation as well. But you know, how would you advise budgeting when all life costs have gone up more than pay, and without knowing how much more things will go up?
It's very difficult, and I think it involves just real planning and re-budgeting. I think some people love doing budgets, don't they? Getting a spreadsheet open, setting out your income and expenditure. Some people absolutely love it. Other people hate it and like to bury their head in the sands and just they'll just spend what they've got in their hands and not think about it. But I think the current climate forces you to budget, I think, and reprioritise what's important. And it is challenging because there are many people out there that are really struggling to pay their energy bills. So it's really, really difficult. But it is, going back to what we've heard over the last few weeks about working out what your big rocks are in your life, what your priorities are, and it's the same within finance. Start from scratch and say, right, what do I really need? Get that in the budget first, and then what's less of a need and more discretionary are your choices that you've got comes later.
She agrees. I've got a couple of random ones. How tall is the average giraffe?
Oh, gosh.
No.
Who asked that?
I don't know. They're anonymous. Did you know that Lurpak is now £7? Should we still buy it?
Absolutely. Margarine, I'm sorry, I'll give up on lots of things, but we got to stick with Lurpak. I mean, how on earth can you eat toast without Lurpak? It's ridiculous.
Hey,
Norpak's good from Aldi.
Norpak from Aldi. So I want to start tithing, but with the cost of living crisis, I don't know if I can afford it. Any tips? So maybe just give us, for anyone that doesn't know, kind of briefly, what is tithing? And kind of, I want to start. And there's another one that's come in, which is linked. Again, I want to tithe, but my partner doesn't get it and doesn't come to church. Any advice?
I'll make a start.
Cool.
So Caz will point out where I've got this theologically wrong. Tithing is a principle which we get from the Bible. So in the Old Testament, the bit of the Bible before Jesus lived on earth, it was very much an instruction for the Jewish people to give 10% of their income, the very first 10%, to the church, to God, to the temple, and that principle of tithing sort of was endorsed by Jesus as he spoke to Jewish leaders when he was on earth and said it's a good thing to do, it was expected. So that's a principle which we've taken into the New Testament of basically giving 10% of your income to God. And I think if anything, the New Testament speaks more about being even more generous than that and in many ways giving everything. But it is more about your heart then you should never do anything out of compulsion or feeling forced to do it. It's absolutely, you're giving your heart to God, and as Marcus said, often a sign that we truly have surrendered everything to God is being generous with our money. And so it's a really fundamental principle. I think, can I tell a bit about our experience?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Yeah. So my experience through life has been that giving 10% and even more generous than that has been an absolutely incredible way in my life to make sure that money hasn't become the thing that I'm after. I think it's great when God blesses you with lots of money, I think it's fantastic. But if that takes your heart and that's what you're living your life for, then it becomes miserable, and your world becomes very small because it's all about you. And giving away your money and being generous is the best way of making sure money doesn't get hold of your heart and material possessions doesn't get hold of your heart, and that becomes the thing that you live for. And God honours it. He really does. In my experience and our experience as a family.
Yeah, 100% agree with Tim on that. I think tithing really is not about rules. It's about how much do you trust God? How much? And personally, Mark and I, we started this right at the beginning of our married life together. And we decided a figure and a percentage. And our first month of buying our house, no, it was the first month we got married, and there was, like everybody experienced, there was more month than money. And basically after we'd paid everything, we'd moved in, bought our first shop, we had £8 to live on for a month if we tithed. And we made a decision right at the beginning of that time, no matter what, we are going to trust God. And we tithed, and there was no way that we would make it through that month. And Mark had he always had business ideas, and he'd bought a carpet cleaner. And bless his mother, she said, I will pay you £25 to clean my carpet. And we lived on £33. But that's lots of years ago. But what I can say, the principle is still the same all the way through, is that we set that in place. We said we trust God. God, 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever, however it's increased. This is what we trust you with, and we know that you're going to look after the rest. And it's been an incredible journey. Both Tim and I could keep you here with stories, but what I'm saying is there's a verse in the Bible that says, test me in this. This is one thing that you can test God on. And so, listen, just give it a whirl. It's about heart, as Tim said, and you determine in your heart and you give that to God, and what he does is he increases that generosity, and it's incredible. And can I say the most exciting thing is that when you bring your tithe into this place, you've decided this is your place, just look at the incredible things that your leadership team are able to do in helping people, your food banks, everything like that. Yeah, you can put your money out to your charities and whatever, and we do that over and over. But the main thing, it comes into the church where you're doing it, and it's just incredible what you do as a church, what we do as a church here. Is that okay?
Thanks, guys. I've noticed that they have kind of skipped one of the hard questions, where I don't know if you can answer it. Any tips? And again, it's always specific, isn't it? But maybe one person from a family comes to church, and the rest of the family doesn't come to church. What should any tips for that family?
Yeah, over the years, we've seen this. It's a discussion. Obviously, you've got to talk to your partner. You've got to be honest and open. One of the main reasons that marriages fail these days is over arguing about finance. So you've got to talk that through honestly and carefully with your partner. Communicate what you would love to do. If they are dead against it, I would say you have to respect that. You're one, and you have to respect that. Can I say to you, young people, make sure you marry somebody who is on the same page as you, because it's so difficult. But whatever, so you talk about that. If they say no, then here's what I would, always the advice that I gave. You get money, you get birthday money, you get maybe legacies, you may get a bonus at work. And, if you're honest and open with your partner and say, well, look, any extra income that I get, are you happy for me to tithe on that? God will be so pleased with that. It's a heart thing. He knows you want to, and he knows that you're going to wherever you can. That would be my advice.
Really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there is a pot of money that only you are in control over, then you can decide on that. But if it's a joint pot, then it has to be a joint decision, and you both have to agree. So, and for somebody that isn't a Christian and doesn't believe in tithing, you can't force them to tithe. So you've got to come to an agreement, and I think that's absolutely fine.
Awesome. I think hopefully we're nearly done. A couple more possibly, if we can get through them. If we don't, so how does politics affect the economy? What's the relationship between our ever-changing Prime Minister, Chancellor, the Bank of England? Why does politics affect the economy so much?
Well, I mean, over the last couple of months, I think who hasn't been watching the news about the change in the Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Exchequer about 5 times? Anybody not been watching it? just the one. So, I mean, it's been in one sense, even though Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng weren't at the helm very long, it's been a real eye-opening to answering that question you've just said. How does politics affect the economy? Because the government of the day set how much tax we all pay and also how much they spend on public services. So the NHS, education, the welfare state, benefits, everything else. So the government decide how much we all pay in different taxes and how much gets spent. And you can have one extreme to the other. You can have high tax, high spend, or low tax and low spend, and everything else in between. And it affects the economy because how much we get taxed impacts on how much we've got left to decide how we're going to spend ourselves and the growth in the economy. So I think we're not going to get into political debate necessarily, but we've seen an extreme over the recent weeks where there was an experiment and they suggested we cut taxes, but not sort of explain where that money's going to come from, and that caused instability in the financial markets. But hopefully it'll be much more stable going forward now.
Very complex. I'm just glad we've got good people that can unpack stuff for us. Not the government, Tim and Caz. That is. Jokes. So we're nearly finished. Why don't you? Is there anything else, like a top tip when it comes to money, or kind of just something to do with the Bible and money that, like, you both of you, kind of one at a time, just want to share with us?
I would say just pray about it, because you might not think that. If you find money boring, then you might not realise this, but actually every day the choices that you make with how much you spend on what does impact the rest of your life. And so I would just pray about it and make sure you're being wise with that money, because you're the steward, you get to choose, and how you spend it, how you save it affects not only your future but your family's future. So I would say pray about it, and then ask God how you can demonstrate generosity, and if God sort of puts something on your heart, how you can help somebody and be generous, give some money away or buy somebody something. Just do that and see the impact it has in your heart, in your life, and those people around you, and I think you'll be surprised.
I've always said that, if you want to check the state of your heart, look where you spend your money and your time. And it's a really, really good eye-opener sometimes just to review, because the Bible says, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And so sometimes, and we all do this, there sometimes has to be a bit of a recalibration where we sort of like be honest with ourselves and say, yeah, this is what I'm doing with my money, and does that reflect my relationship with Jesus Christ and all of that. And don't get into condemnation and legalism. Recalibration is just sometimes just a little shift over to the left, just changing little things. Don't go today and think, that's it, I'm going to live on 50% of, what I've got, and do this. Little steps that move you, into the place that God wants you to be. And then the final thing is that God prospers us in order that we can be generous to others. It's not about accumulating more for me. The greatest thrill in our lives is when we are able to be generous to others because what God has given us to us. I'm telling you now, there's no better feeling to be able to be generous and give to others, and that's hard. And we were young marrieds. There were often more month than money, but God has led us into this place, and I just believe we're nothing special, nobody special. It's just putting those little principles in place, starting today, doing the little things, and man alive, you just watch in a year's time how your life can be transformed. Really believe it.
Thank you so much, guys. Can we give them a round of applause? It's a big thing to come up and talk openly, honestly, about finance, and we really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to finish in just a second. The cafe will be open again. The kids will come down. Please hang around. I'm going to pray. Listen, we've taught money for the last few weeks, and if you want to ask some specific questions about money, there's a couple of things, like maybe, don't weight them down, but there's people internally that we can signpost you to. But also, we work and we support an organisation called CAP, Christians Against Poverty. And they're a fantastic organisation. If you are struggling with debt, they're a great organisation, and it's confidential from us, and they'll really be able to help you out. You hear a lot of these adverts on the TV, don't you, about loan consolidation and writing off debts. Well, my thing is, please be very careful with things like that, because there's always stuff in the terms and conditions. But CAP is a Christian charity who really want to help you in those situations, and so that's something we'd just love to signpost you to if you do want some serious conversations about managing debt and finance. But let me pray, and then we're going to finish. God, I thank you so much for your guidance in our lives. God, I thank you that you have instructed us about finance, Lord, as well as so many other things. And God, we thank you that your instructions and your guidance is the best thing that we can have in our lives, God. And I just pray for everyone in this place, everyone watching online as well, God. God, I pray that we would continue to understand your guidance, to seek your guidance, Lord, and to live out your guidance in every area of our lives. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching The Preach. It has been an amazing morning, and we would love to see you in the week at any of our events. So stay up to date on our social media, on our website. Keep checking, because we update things all the time. We have so much going on, and we'd love to see you there. Have a great week.